Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock Blog, and I'm here with Kenny, Lady Cao Feng, and Adam, and we're talking about Brave Archer 3, a 1981 Cheh movie. This is the third installment of the Brave Archer series. It's kind of the final installment, depending on how you divide it, because there's also Brave Archer and his mate, and I think Little Dragon Maiden as well. But this is the third Brave Archer, and for our purposes, it's going to be the last in the series that we're doing, and it tells the story of Legend of Condor Heroes, which is the tale of the heroic couple Guo Jing and Huang Rong. And in this episode or this installment, we get to see Huang Rong and Guo Jing go to Iron Palm Peak and steal a manual from Iron Palm Sect. Huang Rong gets injured, and they seek recovery on from Emperor Duan, who is one of the five greats, who is now in sort of like seclusion in a temple protected by his four disciples, and he's left the secular world and become Reverend Yi Deng. And they go there to seek healing from him. Along the way, they meet a woman named Ying, who has a grudge against the emperor, and so she helps them reach him in order to help herself get revenge. And there's a number of events which I'm glossing over, and then they have a big showdown on their way down the mountain with Iron Palm Peak. So I was going to get into the movie, but did somebody want to say something before I go?
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So the movie opens, and we get the sort of a recap of the last film, where Huang Rong becomes the leader of Beggar Sect. Yang Kang's deception is exposed, and he leaves with Iron Palm Sect to go to Iron Palm Peak. And there's a narration that sort of explains everything that happens, and then Yang Guo and Huang Rong go to get the U manual. There's a scene where Chief Chan Ren, the leader of Iron Palm Sect, introduces Yang Kang, who is played by a new actor, and we're going to discuss this in a moment. He is introduced to the rest of Iron Palm Clan, and we get a demonstration of Qian Ren's Iron Palm technique in what looks like to be a bowl of, I don't know if it was hot sand or hot bits of iron. What did you guys think that was?
Yeah, hot sand. I think it's.
I thought it was hot iron.
Okay, yeah, because his palms were black, and it was unclear if it was coming from his internal energy or the material that he was dealing with. So they they're alerted to the intrusion, and Huang Rong and Guo Jing find a chamber, and they see the body of one of the earlier leaders of Iron Palm Sect, and Guo Jing mentions that they used to be a sort of a good patriotic sect, and he doesn't think that the former leader would object to him taking the manual, so he takes it. As they're leaving, Chief Qian Ren palms Huang Rong, and they have to flee through a back entrance. And as they're because they're in an area that's forbidden, the Iron Palm Sect has to take another pathway to meet with them, and they eventually chase them to a hut by a swamp. And so I don't know, what do you guys think of the Iron Palm sequence and the new actor playing Yang Kang?
What a terrible choice! Like we talked about this previously, and it goes from the perfectly cast Yang Kang character, like young, mischievous looking, not with a little bit of innocence in him, to a guy who looks like he could be the father of the first one.
He just looked very tired compared to the other Yang Kang was so full of energy, and this guy just looked like there was no fight in him. There was no, I don't know.
Well, type.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, the new Yang Kang is played by Yu Taiping, who is considered to be a second tier Venom, who appears in most of their movies with them, usually as a bad guy, but more as kind of like a sidekick to like the bad guy, and so. But yeah, this choice was just really bad because he's much shorter than the original Yang Kang, who was played by Yi Li Min. So, I mean, it's a definite stark contrast. You can tell there's a change, and the energy around him has changed also.
The thing I wondered is he was so almost irrelevant to what was going on. It's like he just got introduced basically, and that was it. I almost felt like, if you couldn't get the actor again, you could have just written him out like, oh, Yang Kong just took off, and just kind of got around it, and you wouldn't have had anyone even commenting on it. It was just kind of weird to bring a new actor in to do so little, I thought. But,
yeah, I mean, they changed enough of it. Like they could have just said like, oh, we sent Yang Kang back to his father, and after we failed at the Megasec type of thing, and rather than trying to shoehorn a random actor in just to have him, say like a line or two of flattery, and then not have him show up for the rest of the movie.
I mean, I guess the good part of it is, we don't have to deal with him very long, so. There
is that.
It's for the best.
Yeah. So there was that, but yeah, I just did not. I get that he's only like on screen for like 2 seconds in this one, which is maybe its own issue in the movie, but I did not. The casting and like Lady Cao Feng said, it's not that the actor himself was bad. It was just like it was a weird choice. It didn't fit at all, and you need somebody with like a twinkle in the eye to play Yang Kang. There has to be something charming about him, and the other guy was so charming and just perfect, and this was I was just like, what's going on? I guess maybe he's just sort of coming off this horrible defeat, so I guess that could sort of explain the deadness in his face that we get for the scene, but it just didn't work for me.
But after the shift from the first one to the second one, when they changed Huang Rong, that didn't bother me as much as this did, even though he's only on the screen for such a little bit of time. The first switch in between the first two movies, it kind of went seamlessly, because the first time I watched it, I never even noticed that Huang Rong was different until like probably midway through the movie. And then I realized, but then this one is just, it's a stark difference. They needed, I guess, to get someone more of the same body type or the same personality to slide in there, even if it was for a few seconds. Or they could have just left that scene out, because it was kind of rehashing what happened at the end of the last one. So, I don't know. They could have just glossed over that part.
Yeah, well, the Huang Rong switch, I mean, the new Huang Rong, it took me a little bit to adjust to her, but she's a good Huang Rong. I mean, once I adjust her, it's like, oh, she's doing a really good job. I totally bought her as the character. So that, I mean, any switch is always going to be a little bit difficult, but that was a much easier one to take.
Yeah, I think that was pretty... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just keep going. I was just saying, like, my question is, like, why did they have to change the characters? Like, availability issues, or?
Probably.
I would assume it had something to do with that, because I would think the director would either that or the director was displeased with the previous performer, but I don't think that was the case. So.
No, because Lee Yi Min was a pretty good star at that point, and so I'm guessing he probably was working on another project and couldn't get back to this, because unlike today when they
Harvest, didn't he switch to
another... he did.
So maybe that was it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the thing is, Yang Kong is a bit part in this. So if you're saying he was a pretty big star at the time, they might have sent him the script. And he's like, I've got 3 lines. No,
I don't think it even worked like that. I don't think like they got the script. It wasn't. I don't think they're treated like Brad Pitt at the Shaw Brothers studio.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think they have contracts, and that's so like for example in we did the Dragon Inn. Originally, Cheng Pei was supposed to be in that one. That was the plan. But it couldn't work out because of the contract arrangements, and she was with Shaw Brothers and he was with I forget the name of the company, but it was a Taiwanese company that made that one. But the next sequence is the Black Swamp sequence, where they're on the run from Iron Palm sect, and they come to this hut, and it's surrounded by mist, and it turns out that there's this quicksand that they have to cross over to get to the hut. And because Huang Rong knows Taoist formation stuff, she's able to figure out that there's a I don't know, some kind of what is it, the Bagua, the 8 diagram stuff, something like that. That if you take the right path, you can get to the hut. And so she issues instructions to Guo Jing, and they cross and they reach the entrance, and they leap over the wall, and they get inside, and they meet a woman named Yinggu, who's a white-haired woman with a lot of knowledge of Taoist formation and math, and she's called Divine Mathematician. And Huang Rong sees that she's making this diagram, and they have this exchange. And because Huang Rong grew up on Peach Blossom Island, and her father is very famously knowledgeable of this stuff, she knows all these formulas, and she's able to impress her with her knowledge. And eventually the woman tells them that if they go to Emperor Duan, that he might be able to cure them. As she sort of, she gives them a bundle that she says to give to the emperor, and if he sees it, he'll be sure to help. And as they're eating dinner with her, she makes some food for them. She learns that Huang Rong is the daughter of Huang Yaoshi, and she gets really upset. And then she reveals that her beloved is detained at Peach Blossom Island. And and it seems that she's been mastering this Taoist formation magic because she wants to free her beloved from the island. And so she basically says, she would feed dogs, but she won't feed them. And so I think she actually literally throws the food out the window, or something to that effect. And Huang Rong and Guo Jing leave, and on their way out, Huang Rong sort of throws her a math problem, and then they start making their way to the emperor. So I left out a few details, but what did you guys think of that scene?
It just makes formation stuff seem like glorified Sudoku.
I was going to say that too. That's what I was thinking.
Did I make it sound that way, or did the movie make it sound that way?
No, the movie did.
Movie.
I guess so. I mean, I sort of am trying to figure out. It seems to occupy a lot of functions in the movie, and in the story, and it's not always easy for me to sort of grok exactly how it's meant to be functioning in reality, like at the feet of the characters. But a lot of what was going on. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll say that my main gripe with it seems to be that the Black Swamp, is it natural or is it man-made? If it's natural, then who set it up who set up the invisible path according to the Taoism stuff?
I don't know. But what I would imagine is it's a quicksand swamp, right? So if you put a sufficient amount of blocks of material into the sand in the right pattern, you could make a formation that you could cross. Would that be like you could put some kind of structure in there, or maybe even just maybe there's beams under the mist that you can't see. But
or is this supposed to be like fortune telling, where where Huang Rong is basically an advanced supercomputer that can calculate the flow of the quicksand based on
I get you, like the feng shui, like it's like a.
Yeah.
I took it to mean like there's some kind of concealed pathway that Yinggu put there, and that Huang Rong was able to figure out that was the pattern somehow, on a hunch. I don't know. That's a good question. But either way, the crucial thing is they meet this woman who's very striking and a little bit unusual, and is sends them on a path to Emperor Duan, but also indicates that she has a person that she loves very much who is trapped at Peach Blossom Island. Did she mention who it was at this point, or is that not till later? Okay.
No, she didn't mention it.
But
Yeah, I
it
should
was
have
pretty
guessed,
obvious
but I
if
didn't
we'd
clue
seen
in.
like because
If you saw the first two, you know.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I
but
just
really,
wasn't
would you? Because
thinking
it's
about
so it's such. I don't remember if I jumped to the conclusion or not when I first got to this point in the story. But he's an unusual person for somebody like her to
It's
pine
true.
for.
Well, that's true, but he was the only person that we know that was trapped on the
true.
island. So if you use that clue with what she said, then it only had to be him.
That's true.
Yeah,
So
as
I
far
don't know.
as
Was there
far-
anything about this scene that you guys wanted to discuss before we get on to the Emperor Duan material?
I say all the kind of math problem stuff. I was kind of going forward from this scene too. I was kind of getting like a Dora the Explorer vibe, like Huang. I was going to turn to the camera and be like, "Do you guys know?" And that's right, 23.
So
But,
I actually wrote down notes for all of them. So like one of them was like the 9 palace principle, which she said is based on the analogy of a turtle, and
yeah,
she says 2, 4 is the shoulders, 6, 8 is the foot, 7 on the left,
Right.
3 on the right, 9 is the head, 1 is the foot, and 5 stays in the center. 9-place theory is the foundation of Taoist formation, and they all add up to 15. So whatever direction you read them in, it adds up to 15. So
I'm
And
honestly not sure that it is the foundation of Taoism.
I don't know
I
enough
see-
about Taoism to know, any of it. And also I don't know how much of it is translation too. But
The translation was fairly on point. For
was
that
it? Okay.
stuff. It was. I was just sat there thinking, I've never heard of Taoism using a freaking square as their foundation. Like from my point of view, Taoism should be, from nothing comes the Tai Chi Yin Yang symbol, and then from that comes the 4 directions, and then the 8. You get the powers of 2 thing. 2, 4, 8. 16, 32, and then infinite type of thing. That's what I thought the foundation was, but apparently not. It's
maybe this is like the peach blossom branch of Taoism, where
I don't know.
I
think
don't
it made
know.
the all the math puzzles work for me from the standpoint of just how much sheer glee Huang Rong was showing and getting to show off her math skills. It was like she was just really enjoying these puzzles, and that kind of made it work for me.
How many opportunities does she get though to do that? Like that she was smiling the whole time. She was very proud of herself, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And so just that look
I
of
like
that self-satisfied grin that she had.
I imagine that's how maths PhD students must feel when they get a chance to talk about their subject
Exactly.
to other people. It's like, yes, someone who can understand what I'm saying.
And I really enjoyed the math scenes. Being a math teacher, I have actually given that kind of problem to my kids, where I tell them you have the numbers 1 through 9, and you have to put them in the tic-tac-toe board in order to make 15, and all angles need to add up to 15, even diagonally. So that was pretty cool to see something that I actually use in my classroom in a movie.
My dad's a sales consultant, and he puts clips of movies in his presentations sometimes, and you could do something like that here. You could get a clip of this and put it in your math class, and provided the numbers. I think the numbers panned out in most of these cases, right?
The 23
Yeah.
one pans out. I did that one in my head as I was going along, and that pans out.
But
if they don't
did any
pan
of
out,
you
don't use
understand
them.
what
But
What's that?
I said if they
Did
don't
anyone-
pan
any
out,
of you
don't use them in
understand?
your class. But
Yeah.
what was that,
But
Kenny?
did any of you understand what the first puzzle was? I have no idea what was going on in that one when they were talking. Like,
Oh yeah, I wrote that one down too. So
I didn't actually think about that.
That was the 505 one. That was just a bigger version of the one that she was talking about, where the sum each reached 505 in every direction, I think. So I think the
Right.
idea was she was just there were these different formulas for how to get all these numbers to line up. I don't know.
Because I don't know, because what Yinggu was doing there was she was holding a whole bunch of numbers and throwing them in the air, basically.
Yeah,
going-
like tossing bones, kind of like.
But I mean the
Really
one where she
weird.
was at the mat and she was putting down the.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't putting it down. She literally like tossed it like she would do for fortune telling, and then she was arranging the numbers. And for some reason, that would give her the answer to what the next box should be.
But if the theory of the Book of Changes is assumed to be correct, it would supposedly work, right? Like you would be able to get so. I think that maybe that's why she was doing the casting of the sticks thing, but I don't know, but yeah, it was an interesting scene. And again, I don't know enough about Taoism or I Ching stuff to really weigh in on that. But yeah, I do think Kenny kind of had it right, where it is sort of presented as a Sudoku. That is a
very large one.
Yeah. But again, it's a movie. You only have so many options to sort of visually portray these things.
I would have liked more trigonometry in the movie. I don't know why they couldn't work that in. That's where the movie let me down.
But yeah. So anyways, they go from the hut to traveling to Emperor Duan, and this is where they sort of have to deal with these 4 challenges, these 4 disciples that are protecting Emperor Duan while he's in his seclusion, I guess. Basically, I think they don't want any enemies to get up there and harm him, so they're very cautious about who they let in. And the first person that they encounter is the fisherman, and he right away. And was this who was it? Chang was that?
Chang plays the fisherman.
Okay, and I thought he was a good choice for this role, and he deduces pretty quickly that she's sick and that she wants to get treatment from the master, and they tell him that they're disciples of Master Hong Qigong, and he asks if they're here on orders from Hong Qigong, and they say yes, or Huang Rong says yes, and he says that Emperor Duan has already left the secular world, and he was accompanied by nine-fingered beggar Hong, and so he seems to be suspicious of their story, and Huang Rong adapts and says, well, okay, we're his disciples, but he didn't send us. And Huang Rong realizes that when he says that the emperor has left the secular world, and I don't know what the actual words were, because I suspect that the translation might have been messed up there, but she realizes that he's become a monk and that there's a temple on the mountain. And the fisherman says, that there's a path behind the waterfall, and if you can find it yourself, I won't stop you. So they basically have to find out how to get up the waterfall, and they find a stone that they slide, and it causes a path to form from the rocks over the falls, and they're able to walk up. So I don't know, that was the first encounter. What did you guys think of the first one?
I thought that was pretty interesting, because I was wondering, in that era, how would you get the mechanisms to work to form the path to go up the mountain like that?
Oh, like the gears and stuff to get the...
Right.
I mean, I will say they did have very elaborate engineering. I don't know if they would be capable of this or not, but I've been surprised just when I've been doing research for my own games set in the Song Dynasty, which is this period. They have a lot of elaborate engineering treatises and manuals for all kinds of complicated devices. So I don't think that there was ever anything like this in history, but I think that it's not outside the realm of possibility to create something like this with the technology of the time. I just don't know about the practical, making of it, if that's, if it would have been useful to anybody.
I like the first encounter. I like all the encounters. This is where I really like the movie, where the Venoms appear. So this is like one of my favorite parts of the movie. But I like it because it shows how quick and clever that Huang Rong is, that she could actually figure out that going in has left the secular world didn't mean that he passed away. And she put her surrounding clues, because you can kind of see the temple in the distance from where they were. And she put all the clues together to figure out that he'd become a monk and he was secluded.
Yeah,
and finding out which rock made the bridge, because her father was a genius at hidden mechanisms and things like that. Her father was a genius at everything, let's just face it.
Yeah, this is really definitely a showcase of Huang Rong's smarts. Like, you get a good sense of her character over the course of the hut and this, and then the upcoming encounters. So let's see. So then the next encounter is with the woodcutter. My
favorite.
I had a feeling. And so with this one, he it's a little bit more, and it's played by Lu Feng, and it's he basically agrees to have a bet with them, and if they win, he'll let them pass. And she says, "Let's see who can climb the tree the fastest." And she pulls some specious argumentation in order to rig the contest in
I
Guo
feel like
favor.
it works better in Chinese than
Does
it
it?
does
That's what I
in-
wanted to know.
Yes.
So here's what so eventually, what she does is they're climbing up the tree, and then I think she tells Guo Jing to go down to the bottom all of a sudden, and he goes, and she says, I said, whoever can get to the head of the tree, and the real head of the tree is the root of the tree, as you would know, something like this, right? So,
Right.
And then in the confusion, she has Guo Jing run back up the tree, and he starts going up the tree again, and then when he's up there, she walks away, and Guo Jing leaps over and joins her, and then they sort of run up the path while he's trying to get down the tree. Do you think that's an accurate assessment of the action and the wording?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. The woodcutter is not the brightest bulb in the pack. I will admit to that. Yeah, she definitely outsmarted him with the wordplay, saying that the root was the head of the tree because that's where the water feeds the tree, and the foot of the tree is the limbs and the leaves. So she definitely outsmarted him there, and was able to get by him quickly.
And Kenny, what was that you said about language? You said something about the translation not working as well.
Yeah, I feel like there was some wordplay going on there, which they did a decent job of translating into English. But I feel like it would, if you understood what she was saying, then you can sort of see the trickery that she was playing from the get-go, rather than it being contrived definitions of what the root and the head of the tree is, type of thing.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of the Zhao Zhijing deception in Return to Condor Heroes when he agrees not to share something with a fourth person or a fifth person, and he gets around it because there's a group of people and says there's no fifth person, and so it's a similar line of logic. But they find the path, and then their next encounter is with the farmer. And here there seems to be no path up the mountain. Instead, there are two creeper ropes. And if they can guess which one is correct, I guess they can go up, is the idea. And he sort of, with his body movement, suggests that he's more protective of one of the ropes. And so Guo Jing goes over to that rope. And then when Wang Rong has him pull the rope, a big giant boulder comes down and the guy has to grab it. And because it's a trap, and so he's stuck there holding the boulder, and they're able to run up the other rope.
And the only reason he is protecting them is because she mentions that they were Hong Qigong's disciples at the last minute. And it's like, oh crap, Hong Qigong is a guileless person, and I can't hurt his disciples. I gotta protect them.
Yeah, because he's got a trap set up where when he pulls the rope, the rock will come down and beam the person on the head, and so. So it was an interesting but a quick one, I thought. And then after that we get to the encounter with the scholar, which is I thought the more striking of the encounters. They get there and there's a scholar reciting Confucius, and Huang Rong is definitely in her element, and she asks how many students he had, and I think he said he had 3,000 followers, and 72 of them were acclaimed. And then she asks, yeah, but among his students, how many were young and how many were old? And he's like, oh, the Analects don't mention this. I don't know. And then she's able to sort of figure out through deduction that I think there were like 30 children, or no, 30 grown-ups. And so he's impressed. And he basically, says, okay, I'll ask you a couple of things, and if you can answer, I'll let you go through. And so I think the first one was like a riddle with a zither and a pipa, and the what was that? Oh, sorry. And then the next one she had to deliver a line herself, and she sort of delivers a line that is in keeping with what they're doing, but also sort of compares these four disciples to ghosts and monsters and various things. And so he's impressed by her scholarly abilities, and he lets her through. But he says, but I want to see this gentleman's kung fu. And Guo Jing sort of leaps over him and grabs his cap on his top knot, and he's impressed enough to let them through. And so I probably left out a couple of details, but that's sort of the basic structure of the scene. What did you guys think of this one?
There was a lot of sort of scholarly stuff going on there that was a bit difficult to understand, even like when you can sort of tell what they're saying. I think what impressed me the most about this scene actually is the couplets, the rhyming couplets. Sort of so to give a bit of a background, basically what they're doing there is they've got like a phrase, short phrase of several words, and the idea is you have to say something which matches either, I don't know what the exact rules are. You have to either match, like it has to be the exact opposite of each word, but the meaning has to be along the same theme, and it has to something to do with the way the words sound as well. So it's not easy. Like it's not supposed to be easy to be able to match these couplets, and the fact that Huang Rong was able to both meet the requirements of the sounds and the meaning of the words, and mock the four disciples at the same time is supposed to be quite impressive in terms of her actual sort of not education level, but her book smarts.
Yeah, I thought that this was a perfect showcase of her intelligence and her cheekiness. She was able to match wits and words with the scholar. She was kind of, like you said, in her element, but she was also, I think, a bit smarter than the actual scholar was. And go ahead.
Because she also has the benefit of a perfect memory, doesn't she?
Yes.
Which is mentioned like once in the movie, explain why she's so smart.
Which she gets from her mother. So then the next scene, they arrive at the temple. This is where I really start to enjoy this movie, is where we meet Reverend Yi Ding, Emperor Duan, who's now a monk, and they give him a bundle, and it contains the mandarin duck fabric, and then there's this sort of dreamy music that it said at the beginning of the movie it was performed by Jenny. When I looked up, it's Jenny Chang, who's also a Shaw Brothers actress, and
Fu Sheng's wife.
Oh yeah, okay, thank you. I don't know. I thought the music really added to it. Again, I was saying before the podcast, I thought it kind of had a loungy vibe to it, but it just worked for the mood they were trying to create with the love story that's the background of what's going on here. And so he sees the fabric, and he basically says, okay, well, let her come if she wishes. And he's talking about the Yinggu, who was the woman they met at the hut, and he agrees to heal Huang Rong, but he tells Guo Jing to guard the entrance even against his disciples, and he's not exactly clear on why that is. But then he does this interesting, I guess you could call it like a form or a dance, where he's moving around the room, and then he's touching Huang Rong's meridian points, and he is able to heal her of the iron palm strike, and we're going to talk about that for sure. And the disciples try to sort of force their way in, and Guo Jing stops them. And then when everybody realizes the healing is over, the fighting subsides, and we learn that Reverend Yi Ding is going to lose like his power for 5 years basically, and he is going to need to recover. And so that's why they were trying to stop him, because they knew that this woman was going to come to try to get revenge, and she had sent them knowing that he was going to be weakened, and that would give her a chance to come and attack him. And at first he's just going to send Guo Jing and Huang Rong away, but they come back, and he tells them this backstory, which we'll get into in a minute. But what do you guys think of the dramatic healing ceremony? I know you guys had some thoughts on that.
I just thought that was a very strange demonstration there. Like the sort of stance is facing away from like the target for the healing and the posing, and then the very light taps on on the acupoints. It's just like doesn't quite work for me. And I guess like sort of my visualization of what the solitary yang finger, or the yang finger looks like is more impressive than the sort of the weak shit is showing on the screen there for me.
There was a funkiness to the presentation of the yang finger that I don't know. Again, I was saying before the podcast, because of how tall T-Lung is and his sort of just his physique and the form that he's doing and the sound effects of what was it just I totally hear what you're saying, but in a kind of in a very stylistic way. I found it compelling. I enjoyed it.
I haven't read the book, so I had no preconceptions or anything.
It's definitely not what I visualize with this either. I just thought that it was like given the time the movie was made and all these other things, it just kind of, I don't know. There was a psychedelic component to it somehow.
Well, yeah, what didn't help for me was the lights that kept changing while he was doing. You get a red light and a green light, and I don't know what other color lights, but they're the two I can remember. And his dancing around. That's not what I expected the yin yang finger to be. It's not at all.
I think it defies expectations. Even if you don't know what the yin yang finger is, you get in there and you see that, and you're like, what is going on exactly here? And but I don't know, it just worked on a very strange level for me. It worked.
Well, I had a moment too right before he started where I was like, there was just this feel like, wow, this is a big moment. What is this going to look like? You know, they're going to use special effects, and then he started doing his thing, and I was like, whoa, okay, I didn't.
It had like it looked like if somebody combined a martial arts form and some form of like break dancing that was very easy to do. Like that was what it looked like to me.
I gotta say, like when he first started doing it, like I thought he was like standing a distance and doing his stances. I thought he was going to channel chi through his finger, like a finger bullet sort of thing, and that would be striking her acupuncture points, and that would be healing her maybe. But no, he was just doing that in preparation of getting closer. Apparently.
Well, I think he was channeling his energy as he was doing that, but.
Yeah, I guess the reason why it's so jarring for me is just because the yang finger is the martial arts that the Duan family uses, and it's supposed to be like this is his claim to fame and being one of the five greats is because his yang finger is so strong, and this is why he's on par with Ouyang Feng and the Peach Blossom Island Master. Really?
But look at the results, Kenny. He heals her with the iron palm technique. He has a brief moment of silly stances to achieve tremendous results. But yeah, I would agree. I sort of agree with both sides here. I think on the one hand, it does kind of look a little bit odd. I just find that very compelling about it. It's just the way it's done. But
I like the music.
Yeah, the music. Well, the music again. I'm very susceptible to music, and I find that the music throughout this whole backstory is really sort of helping me get drawn in. But now we get to a point where Reverend Yidang sort of sits them down and tells them, and I really enjoy sort of the back and forth here where he goes in and out of the backstory. And so he tells them that the founder of Chuan Zen sect, Chong Yang, who is apparently sick and not going to live very long, has acquired the Nine Yin Manual, and he comes to Dali with Zhu Batong, and he's concerned because Ouyang Feng has this great toad stance, and he doesn't want Ouyang Feng to win the next Mount Hua competition. So he says that he's decided because and again, Reverend Yi Yang at this time is just the Emperor Duan of Dali. Because he's known for his Yi Yang finger, he's going to show him some of his Chuan Zen style, so that he can master it and he'll be able to handle Young Feng at the competition. But it's going to take some time, and 4 to 6 months, and we see a very young Zhu Batong with jet black hair, and something about him being eccentric when he's young is a lot more jarring than him being eccentric when he's old. And he's very impatient and impish and doesn't understand sort of the regular rules of conduct, but really loves martial arts. But it's clear that he's going to be bored here, and he sort of starts to object to this idea of being here for 6 months. And so the emperor promises him that he'll assign a person to keep him entertained, and he'll make sure that he has a good time. And, sure enough, Zhu Batong is exploring the palace, and he ends up bursting into the inner chambers of one of the concubines who's practicing swordplay. And this immediately intrigues him. And it leads to a love affair between him and the concubine, which we'll get into because it's a very unusual one. And the concubine, we discover, is Yinggu, except at this time she's just known as Lu Ying. And so the empress or the queen eventually finds out about it because Zhu Batong is stubborn and does not know the rules, and he pretty much refuses to leave the bedroom when they're when they're being intimate and the queen is about to arrive, and so he just basically just lets everybody know what's going on, and the queen immediately goes to Duan and tells him what's happening. And when Chang Yang brings Zhu Batong before him to apologize, Emperor Duan very graciously offers to let Zhu Batong marry Lu Ying, and Zhu Batong refuses because he says he doesn't want to get married. He just says, you can kill me, that's fine, but I refuse to get married. And the emperor says, well, I'm not going to kill you. And so Zhu Batong says, oh, okay, well, I'll just leave then. And he gets up and he walks out and he leaves. And so we get back to sort of the present where Reverend Yi Deng is sort of explaining this to them, and it sounds like it's going to be sort of just a funny story where we learn that Zhu Batong had a baby, but he says, oh, no, it's not over. Something bad happened. And so we find out that she had the child, and in the middle of the night, she doesn't know it because it's dark, and in the book, I think he's wearing a mask, but Chief Tian Ren bursts into the chamber and iron palms the baby. And she takes the baby to Emperor Duan, thinking that he was the one who sent in the assassin, and asks him to save it. And Emperor Duan realizes that he has this Mount Hua competition, and whoever did this did it knowing that if he uses his Yi Yang finger, he won't be able to perform at the Mount Hua competition. So he hesitates for a very long time, and it's clear that he's not gonna. It seems he's not gonna decide to help the baby. And Ying Gu's hair turns white at this point, and she ends up stabbing the baby and vowing revenge. And so that's sort of the backstory before we get back to the present and more stuff happens. But I don't know, what do you guys think of the dramatic backstory and the iron palming of the baby and Zhu Batong's youthful antics?
I love the backstory. I think that's probably my favorite part of the movie besides the end fight. But I thought it was very interesting that you put another love story inside of this already epic love story that we already have going between this young couple, but then we get to find out about another character and another love story, and the hair changing to white was very cool, except for I wish they had kept that white wig from when she was in the palace throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Instead of changing back to the other one. I don't know why I like the pure white one better, but
I think the pure white is more cinematic than because the other one of them was like a plausibly gray wig, and one of them was like a stark white, sort of that had that to me looked more cinematic than the I don't know, the more earthy colored one that they had.
Right.
But yeah, I think this is to me these sort of like secret backstories that you learn are sort of the Jin Yong like specialty. Like I feel like he really excels at unloading this hidden information on you.
Yeah, I'm always a sucker for stories within stories myself, so that won me over.
Yeah, but the funny one about this, I really like seeing Zhu Batong at such a young age, being so like again when he's older and eccentric, it's one thing, but to see that he's like this when he's like I don't know how old he's supposed to be, but he's supposed to be young. It's striking, and he's just got absolutely like whatever everybody else in the world is sort of understands about social rules and considerations. He does not have any concern for those things. Even
he's very uncouth and in an innocent way because he doesn't know the rules because he's never been taught the rules. It seems like he'd been in like seclusion almost.
Well, I feel like even if you taught him, he wouldn't follow the rules. I feel like
he's aggressively not following.
Yeah,
that's the, he came off as more aggressive in the younger version. Like we saw him in the previous movie. He's the eccentric, weird old guy who acts childish. But yeah, it's like the initial scene where he gets introduced to the Emperor. He's getting right in the Emperor's face, and just it's a different energy to the older version.
And I was mentioning this to Brendan earlier as well, but I definitely think Double Tongue is supposed to be a representation of autism or someone on the spectrum because he's no, seriously, because
I get it.
He's being mentioned as being a martial arts prodigy, and he has no sort of empathy for other people and a lack of ability to understand social situations. And I think that's about as textbook as you can get, really.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm only laughing because I totally understand being a teacher, and I have a group of children that are on the spectrum, and they get focused and obsessed with one thing, and they can't follow social rules. So I totally get what you're saying.
And I think it's reasonable to conclude. I mean, obviously, when the book was written, knowledge and language of things like autism was much more limited. But obviously, he would have seen people that were on the spectrum, and that might have been a source of inspiration for the kind of character he was trying to create. So I think it's fair to say, even if it wasn't something that would have been part of the lexicon at the time, that he was probably still. So this Zhu Batong character, he feels very much like an autistic character to me. I think Kenny's spot on with that.
I like the Emperor Duan seems to be a pretty compassionate character in general, but it's like that he kind of accepts that he's a guy who this is the kind of guy he is. I get that, and he just kind of rolls with it, And that was a kind of an interesting touch there too.
Well, and we'll see. The depths of his compassion have yet to be seen, actually.
Okay.
And you will witness them in Return of Condor Heroes. But he's. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
Depths of his compassion.
I was to say one thing I find amusing about this whole love story between Double Tongue and Yinggu is that from one point of view, it is a tragic story of love and loss. From Yinggu's point of view, and from Double Tongue's point of view, it was just a nice little fling, and he's off on doing his own thing.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know that he's had a child. He doesn't know that the child was iron palmed and then consequently stabbed by its own mother, because the Emperor wouldn't save it, or the Emperor hesitated too long in saving it, and he's just doing his own thing, being all happy and bouncy, and whereas Jingu is like heartbroken.
He doesn't find out for some time, and they sort of end up in this situation. Well, we'll get to that at the end where we deal with the final scene, But yeah, I don't know. And the whole thing with the baby, we just see Qian Ren is this despicable guy. Like he iron palmed a baby, and obviously Yi Dang feels guilty about it because he didn't heal the baby, and he has responsibility to the outcome as well. But he at least is remorseful. But when we get to the final battle, it's clear that Qian Ren has no remorse for what he did there. But to get back to the present, where after they're done with the story, Reverend Yi Ding explains that he feels remorseful, and he basically says, "Look, let her come and kill me. Like she deserves to have her revenge." It's kind of like who is Bill's brother in Kill Bill, where that woman deserves her revenge. It was that sort of a moment, and he basically Guo Jing and Huang Rong try to save him by sealing his. Guo Jing sneaks into his room and seals one of his acupoints. His kung fu's suppressed now, so it makes sense. And then they sort of lay some hurdles for Yinggu when she comes to do her killing. And so Huang Rong lays like a formation hurdle for her. Guo Jing tries to stop her at a bridge. But eventually she gets past all this and she makes her way to... and also Guo Jing impersonates Yi Ding so that when she first tries to attack him, she has to fight Guo Jing. But eventually she gets to Reverend Yi Ding and she's about to kill him and she can't go through with it and she drops the knife and she flees. And Reverend Yi Ding has his disciples escort Huang Rong and Guo Jing down the mountain and basically says, look, if she encounters any troubles, be sure to help her. And he says to be on the lookout, in case the Iron Palm sect are still snooping around. So I don't know, this is the penultimate scene, but what do you guys think of this one?
Bath is back with the formation that Huang Rong set up. The Bath came back, so it's kind of like full circle in a way. But Auntie Ying is not having it. She just starts kicking everything over to get through. So
Laura went to all this trouble setting up an elaborate math scenario, and she just Ying just wasn't going to get into it.
I loved how mad she got too when she wasn't. So you're not going to comply. She's very upset that Yinggu was not joining in the fun there. But
I still find it amusing that she thought that would stop Yinggu. And so fine, I'll just blow out all the candles in the back.
Yeah.
And she just ignores that. I mean, just walks over it.
Yeah, she was very dismissive of Huang Rong's attempt. But I don't know. I think it at least gave her time that by the time she got to the end, she couldn't go through with it. And Yi Ding was fully committed to letting her kill. He was sitting there with a look of peace on his face as she was preparing to strike him. He was not going to stop her. So
I think that the first obstacle with putting the 4 disciples at the front, trying to appeal to her at the very beginning when she came up the mountain and talking to her like she was still the lady and trying to empathize with her and get her to realize that she's no longer Lady Lu. He's no longer Emperor Duan. So you two really don't have anything to do with each other. And then the other obstacles in between her actually getting to Yi Ding gave her time to think about what she was going to do, and then eventually she couldn't do it. That's my personal opinion.
I think you might be right on that one. I think either way, she definitely has a change of heart when she's actually in the moment of doing it, and she flees from the scene. And then this is what leads us to the final battle where she's leaving and she encounters Iron Palm Chief and they trade palms, and she realizes at that moment that you're the guy who killed my child. And his response is essentially, so what? Yeah, there's more to it than
I barely remember it.
But yeah, he does. He barely. She has to remind him of all these things before it even jogs in his memory.
That baby I killed.
yeah. He's obviously done a lot of killing. This is probably not his one and only crime. So Guo Jing eventually arrives with Huang Rong, and Guo Jing fights the chief, and then a big fight breaks out. And then during the fight, Zhu Batong shows up, and Zhu Batong starts putting peach flowers in the back of the bodies or on the bodies of the Iron Palm sect members, showing where their weak spots are. And because of that, people are able to eventually cut them down. And then Guo Jing strikes Iron Palm Chief. He spits up blood and he falls into a pond. And Zhu Batong ends up running away, and Yinggu chases after him. And that's the end. I might have glossed over a couple of things. It was a pretty long, exciting battle. What did you guys think of this final fight scene? Because one of the things we really haven't talked about is the fighting in this one. And part of it, I think,
wasn't that much fighting.
Yeah, no, there wasn't a whole lot of real all-out battles, and there were a few moments of martial arts, but they all kind of felt very stop and starty, and they were really sort of between bits of dialogue. It was almost like casual martial arts use leading up to a conversation,
right?
But this was the first, like, oh, this is a martial arts movie. We have martial arts to tend to.
It was a really long fight scene. Like, I just thought it felt a little bit dragged on. I mean, I get that they were trying to show that the Iron Palm disciples were, sort of on equal footing with Yi Ding's disciples, and that, were it not for Zobotong showing up and pointing out the weak spots to them, the battle would have been more protracted with injuries on both sides, type of thing. But it did feel a bit too long there.
I enjoyed the battle. I liked, it's typical Venom's fighting with the different sorts of weapons. I like the weapons that Chang Cheh employed in this movie. The fisherman was able to use a very large oar as his weapon. The woodcutter used an axe. And I like Lu Feng with long-poled weapons anyway. They're my favorites to see him with. The scholar used his fan and his kicks. And the farmer used a kind of like a hoe-type tiller weapon. And then the Iron Palm, I like their weapons were kind of strange, but very interesting with the large iron hands.
I love the iron hand. I don't know what you would call them, but the iron hand.
The iron palms.
Yeah. But the thing is, when you say iron palms, then you think the guy's doing that. I'm trying to find a term to distinguish them. But
they're like maces, but with palms.
Yeah, you can like slap somebody with a metal hand. I just love the idea of whack. And I don't know, Adam, what did you think of the?
I agree with Kenny that from a dramatic standpoint, the fight scene did go on an awful long time. But on the other hand, the people doing the fighting were really talented. So I think that saved it for me. It's like it was like I said, it was. So I'm kind of somewhere in between. I think. Well, it did stretch out a long time, but it was good. It was a very satisfying scene. But and going back to our theory about Zhu Batong and so on too, just him kind of showing up, and he just it just highlights how he sees the world different way. It's just like, hey, you guys, it's obvious here. He just instantly sees everybody's weak points, and it like kind of comes in, and it's like, it does have this very, very different perspective on things. I really enjoyed that about him in that scene.
And I like this scene. I think it's a great fight scene. I think it just blazes. The way the movements are just so precise and on point and fast, and the impact feels intense. And so I liked it. But I can see where you guys are coming from, because it is a long fight scene, and it's coming off of a lot of sequences where it was mainly drama and conversation and adventure.
Yeah.
And so
it fits weirdly with the movie. Yeah.
But I think for a martial arts fan, it's like, oh, good fighting. It's like it's great. It's a great sort of caramel coating to the candy bar. It just sort of worked.
But I do want to say that.
I'm sorry. Who wants to go first?
I just want to point out that while I do criticize the length of the fights, I think like all the fights themselves were really good, and the choreography was great there. It's just that if it was like broken up into several parts, like and distributed throughout the movie, I'd have enjoyed them a lot more, rather than it all being so concentrated and then flicking through different sets of people fighting, and then going to the Iron Palm Chief and Guo Jing, and flicking back to the disciples fighting. Like it, I just feel like it while the fight scenes were great, it just wasn't a very good fit in the movie. You know?
Okay.
But if you're coming from the typical martial arts film fan, this is like the perfect fight because it is long. They would rather see nothing but fighting in a film. So this scene actually kind of saves it for a lot of people over the drama. We're kind of different where we take into consideration the whole entire movie and the story and the music and the costumes and everything. Not real martial arts fans per se, but most martial arts fans that like this movie like it because of the final fight. And that's just what I've noticed from
that's
the boards that I'm on and stuff.
Oh no, go ahead, Adam.
I feel like if you were a fan, though, that only you like this movie for the fight scene, I feel like the movie would be a disappointment for you because you have to sit through this whole movie of stuff that doesn't hold your interest to get to this big scene at the end. You know, you're just like, oh, I'm going to watch the YouTube clip.
Well, there are movies like that though, where they're known for the fight, and I mean, I sort of understand. So when I first got really nerdy about martial arts movies, it was when I was doing martial arts, and for me the most exciting part, and I think still the most exciting part, is the fighting. And I could honestly watch a whole movie with no story that's all fighting, and it would be fine and great. When it has a story, I enjoy that too, but I am definitely more in the camp of the fighting is kind of the thing that I'm there for when I watch or I should say the movement, the physical movement of people in front of the camera. It doesn't have to be fighting, but like it's got to be something that holds my interest visually. But this is a movie that is very much driven by a lot of good story too, and it restrains itself until the very end, and so it does create sort of a unique opportunity for a conversation about the role of fighting and the role of story and how seamlessly those should be put together in this kind of movie. And I don't know, I don't think there's any one right answer. I feel like my opinion changes a lot over time, and I go back and forth constantly. I go through these periods where I only care about the fighting, and then I go through periods where I'm more interested in the story. And I think, it's just one of those things where it's sort of a perennial topic of discussion. But also because this connects to a very well-known book, I think the story strength, I think, is derived from the story that they're drawing from. And again, one of the interesting things, if me and Kenny are doing the Return of Condor Heroes, which is the sequel, and we're doing 5 chapters at a time. But one of the interesting things about that is how, I mean, wouldn't you say that they devote a lot of time in the chapters to fighting? Like I would say there's more fighting in the books than in the movies sometimes. Because the books really, like, not only do you get like the fight scenes themselves, but they explain sort of the principles of what's underlying the fight scenes, and you get all this sort of other additional background information about the fights, and it's got to be very inventive because they're trying to keep fighting interesting on the page. So.
I can see it from that perspective. I mean, if you're a fan of the book, it's like, wow, we get to see we finally get to see the scene where they finally fight the Iron Palm Clan. It's like I can see if you're coming from as a book reader going to see the movie, wanting that to be a huge big fight. Definitely.
Well, I guess I'm sort of saying opposite things at the same time. I'm saying on the one hand, there's a lot of fighting in these books, but on the other hand, there's a lot of really good story. And so it's I think what Kenny is picking up on is the fight scene in this feels oddly distributed given the overall like you said, like the movie itself, there's very little fighting until you get to the very end, and then there's this long fight sequence. But I don't know. I for whatever reason this version or this part of the movie works well for me.
I liked it. I'm just saying it was kind of an intellectual thought. It's like, wow, this is, it was more of on an emotional level. I was enjoying it, and it was more my brain kind of, just having a, jumping into critical mode there a little bit. But I liked it.
But and I should say we're gonna have to end it pretty soon here, so we're going over the time limit. But the thing I wanted to sort of get back to was, and we might do Brave Archer and his mate. We haven't decided because technically that does sort of wrap up the other plot elements. But what is everybody's favorite Brave Archer movie so far? What's everybody's least favorite Brave Archer movie so far?
It's this is my first time watching any of them, so I feel like my answer won't be my definitive answer. But honestly, I enjoyed this one the most just because I know the characters. I was involved from the beginning. The second I sat down to watch this movie, I was excited and I was on board. So, maybe when I've gone through and watched this a few times over, the trilogy repeatedly, it might shift. But at the moment, I enjoyed that last one the most.
The third one's my favorite, definitely. I think because the final fight scene, the big battle at the end is, I think, well choreographed. I didn't think it went on too long. I think it gave each of the actors their own time to shine with their specific weapons, and allowed everybody a chance to do what they had to do. And I just liked it because I thought it was controlled chaos. There was so much going on all over the screen with everybody fighting in different ways. And then there were actually points where characters switched their opponents. And it took me a while. I had to watch it several times to figure out how exactly the opponents were switched in the movie. And I thought that was pretty cool because that just kept me thinking. I was like, wait a second, he was fighting him, but now he's fighting him a couple seconds later. So I had to, watch that scene several times to figure it out. But I like the backstory inside of the story. I mean, this whole thing, the third one just wraps all of it up to me. The first part was a build-up. The second part was a meaty middle so that you're invested in what happens next. And so the third one's definitely my favorite. I guess the first one is my least favorite, but I like them all.
So for me, it's slightly different. So in my opinion, the first one was the best movie, followed by the third, and then my least would be the second. But at the same time, it's kind of a little bit of a toss-up there because I liked how the first and second movies had sort of scheming and plotting within the movies, as it were, and I enjoyed those little things about movies there, so that's why I would rank them slightly higher. The third one, it's kind of like, okay, so to explain why I don't like it as much would be, to use an example, say you're watching a drama movie and then towards the end there's like a 20-minute shootout. If you can see where I'm coming from with this, it's a bit
there's a tone shift. There's like a tonal
shift.
Yeah,
the tone shift is a bit too extreme there. You go from like trying to understand like all these like clever little puzzles that Huang Rong is trying to do in the movie, and then then you have a massive fight scene, and it's just like, well, they could have. I don't know how much of this is down to the source material not spacing it out enough.
The source material, that last scene there I remember it very differently, and like Iron Palm Chief doesn't die. I think it was I could be wrong, but I think it was on a river, on a boat, and it was a little different. Like it was a lot different, I should say. And I'm pretty sure Moon Yanxi was there, but I could be confusing sections, so I don't want to fully commit to that, but I think it was quite different.
Yeah, I just think in terms of pacing, like if they'd woven the fight scenes around and I don't know, I just feel like that it could have been paced a little bit better. But yeah, my opinion is that the first movie was actually the best because the way they could introduce the characters and have you immediately get what they were about, if that makes sense. That I thought that was a very strong point in the first movie.
Yeah.
And I also like the whole training arc sort of thing, and the whole learning the martial arts is I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. So that's probably why it sticks out to me the most there.
Yeah, I find it very difficult. I think number one, I think all of them are very good. I think the first movie is great at establishing the atmosphere. That opening shot when they're on the, in the Mongolian camp and you have the wind blowing, and then everything with Mei Chao Feng. I love all the Mei Chao Feng stuff and the adventure in the city. There's a lot of stuff going on in the first one that I think is engaging. For me, the second one is always the one that kind of gives me the most emotional weight and sort of just feels like the center of the film. But I'm constantly going back and forth between the first and the third one because I like a lot of the elements of the first one. I really like the backstory elements of the third one. That's the part that really draws me into that one. And the fight scene at the end is tremendous. So it's kind of a toss-up between those for the second, sort of the second place one. It's a tough one. But I would generally lean on the second one as my... if I'm only gonna be able to watch one Brave Archer movie this year, I'd probably pick the middle one. It's always tricky. And I think also I want to say I think it's good that people disagree on some of these things because it's a totally valid thing to disagree on, and I think that there's more than one good reason to like a movie or not like a movie. And in the case of these things, I don't think there's one way that these movies should be done. There's different reasons that they get made. You see a movie like Reign of Assassins, and that's much more sort of on the. There's a lot of really great action stuff, but that has like a very rich story. But then a lot of the movies that are also equally enjoyable, but not as devoted to depth of story, but they have really great action sequences. Those can be a lot of fun too, especially if you got people like the Venom Mob involved. Then it's like the physical mastery to me is something that I like to see. But not everybody's got the same cup of tea, so I like having different points of view where people are respected. So I will end it here because we've gone way over what we normally do. And we'll be back on next week. We're going to do a Chinese ghost story, which I think is more on the story-rich side of things. But there's plenty of action as well, and a lot of sort of scary moments. And that's going to end our February cycle. We were trying to do stuff that was love themed, so that's why we did the Brave Archer, and now we're ending on a Chinese ghost story. And I thought this was a good series for that purpose. It really does have a lot of love elements to it. And so we'll be back next week. Adam and I will be back over the weekend with another Babylon 5. And on Tuesday, you can expect to see our Lady 87 campaign session again. And until then, we will talk to you later.